I grew up in the Reform movement and became a conservative Jew as an adult. So imagine my surprise to discover, upon moving from one kind of Jewish community to another, that the traditional recitation of the Shema includes another whole paragraph or two that I was not used to reading. The passage in question is the middle section of Shema, the second of its two passages, which is known in rabbinic parlance by its first words, V'haya im Shemoah. That section is taken from this week's Torah portion, Ekev, and it raises important questions for how we understand our relationship with God and how we approach a text like the Shema as a tool of prayer. V'haya im Shemoah makes the claim that cause and effect are in operation in this world. It says that if we obey God's commands, we will be rewarded, and that if we ignore them, we will be punished. The rewards that are specifically mentioned in that section include rain in its proper season and crops that grow as they should. The punishments, of course, are just the opposite. In the traditional liturgy, this is the second of the Shema's three sections. Following the first paragraph, in which we acknowledge God as our God, and just before, in the third section, God's promises of redemption. Its position between those two other ideas is purposeful. If we acknowledge God as creator and God's demands as binding, then we have to accept the cause and effect in this world that are then implied. And if we observe those commandments, we will then be redeemed. The only problem is that most people don't believe it. That's why the Reform movement, to its credit, removed this section from the middle of the Shema. If you don't believe something, why would you constantly be reciting it? But that is not the only way to approach a text that gives us difficulties. In the conservative movement, the emphasis is on conserving, thus the name, conserving traditional texts and practices, while reinterpreting or reimagining what they can mean for us today. So let me give you one possible reading of this section of the Torah and thus of the middle section of the Shema. Many others, of course, are possible. God has commanded us, among many other things, to be the stewards of the world we've been given, to care and to tend for it. If we respond to that command, keeping our land, our water, and our air clean and usable, we will be rewarded with them functioning properly. And, as this section of the Shema says, the rain will fall in the proper amounts and at the proper time. If we continue to poison the land, the water, and the air, we will irrevocably damage our ecosystem. Now, the Torah phrases that as God punishing us, but we can just as easily understand that punishment as being built into the way the world God created and how it naturally functions. That's one example, but the same kind of approach can hold true in a variety of settings. If we refuse to lead lives of righteousness in any part of life, our actions will come back to haunt us, perhaps not as directly and immediately as the Torah states here, but we can put that down to hyperbole on its part. By thinking deeply about sacred texts, whether in the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, or in the Siddur, the prayer book, we infuse them with new meanings that allow us to continue to live by them and to pray them, rather than jettisoning uncomfortable texts or insisting on holding on to interpretations of texts that no longer hold any meaning for us. The conservative movement has always insisted on conserving tradition while simultaneously reimagining it. We don't have to believe or behave exactly as our ancestors did, but we impoverish ourselves when we too quickly and easily leave their ideas and practices behind. A balanced approach permits us to retain our connection to the past while constantly moving into the future with confidence. As the second section of the Shema teaches us, there is something like cause and effect in this world. We should listen to that lesson daily, We should pray it daily. And we should try to create the kind of outcomes that will bring peace and love and learning into this world. Shabbat Shalom.